you again for joining us this beautiful Wednesday as we continue to work on our project of life insurance sales. As you know, this year we've taken a little turn of difference, going into the actual business rather than into the carrier and product knowledge. And we've been working in a step-by-step format, starting with the very beginning of prospecting and the number of techniques you might use to do that. And then through the steps following, setting that appointment, going ahead and getting all the information gathered properly, whether that was health information or financial information, and being able to meet with the client, develop a plan, and then put that plan together, and then present that plan, which is where we left off last week. We made that presentation. If you haven't had a chance in the past to go back, if you've missed any of the classes, please go to the Messer Financial website and go to our Agent Resources tab at the very top, and that will drop down when you open it to the Messer Learning Center. And from there, you'll find each of the webinars we've done posted for your benefit to review for future understanding. As will be the case today, again, this will be recorded. And of course, the next step, after having made the presentation and gotten the acceptance, as we did last week in the step process, to go ahead and make an application, that's what we're going to do. So it's my pleasure this morning again to have a gentleman with us that I have worked with for many years, also quite knowledgeable, very knowledgeable in the life insurance business. Neither of us want to tell you how many years we've been doing this, but the gentleman with us today is Mr. Bob Long, and Bob is part of the affiliation of Messer with the Benchmark Group. And it's my pleasure to turn the presentation over to you this morning, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you having the trust and confidence that will allow me to help all of our agents make sure that they take that last step after they've done all the hard work, the prospecting, the setting the appointment, meeting with the client, and making the presentation and getting a sale, getting an agreement. And now you've got an opportunity to take some information, which is really an application for your paycheck, if you want to look at it that way. So even though a lot of the hard work, most of the hard work is behind you, now this is the most important thing you can do if you want to serve your client, to get him or her that policy as quickly as possible and to get a paycheck for all the hard work you've done to get to this point. We don't want any delays in the home office beyond what's already there. So we're going to try to help you make sure that when you send in an application, you're going to make a good impression on that underwriter. So when they start out, they say, wow, look how neat and well completed this application is, to put that underwriter in a good mood so that hopefully they'll look forward to doing business with your applications. And maybe, who knows, somewhere down the road, you might get a break or two from an underwriter because of the quality of the application that you've presented. Now, let me just give you a brief overview of what I'm going to do. You see on the screen here a section of the American General Partners Group training sessions that are here. I'm going to use this today to kind of be the outline of what we're going to cover. And I know that many of you, most of you, maybe all of you have taken applications in the past. I've taken a few over the years, and I've scrubbed a few over the years. And as Mark said, I can't tell you how long, but let's just say a lot of decades I've been doing this. So I won't say I've seen everything because I still get surprised once in a while, but I'm going to try to help you avoid some of the pitfalls to make this thing go through as smoothly, quickly, and accurately as possible. So what I'm going to do, first of all, and I'm going to tell you how to get to this point on the website, which is a just absolutely comprehensive website for just about anything you could imagine and then some. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in these huge, massive websites. I'm going to give you a step-by-step so that you can jot down some notes, or you can go back to it later when you look at the recording. But before I do that, if you want to take some notes, I just jotted down a few things that I see when I look at applications that come through our office, and things that I try to remind myself of when I write an application, to make sure that I don't overlook something, that I'm not careless, and so forth. So I'm just going to write out, I'm going to read out, 8 or 10 of the most numerous mistakes that are made on applications that we look at. First of all, make sure that you have the right forms, the right company, the right plan, the right state, all of those things. It's very easy to eliminate this potential problem if, and I will show you later on how to obtain these forms if you don't already know, but you can actually go to the website, which I'll give you the website address in just a minute, and you go to the forms area and click on Kit. It's going to give you every form that you might possibly need, and you can pick and choose the ones or unpick the ones you don't want to use. But if you click on Kit, you're going to have all the forms that you might need, and then you can pick and choose the ones that you do need, depending on the profile of your client. So make sure you use the right forms. Number 2, make sure that you're legible when you write in anything on an application. Now, I know a lot of us want it to be doctors, but we don't have to write or sign like a doctor does. If your handwriting is questionable, I would recommend that you print, even in capital letters, because legibility is very important. One letter, an O, an E, an A, an I, just print. That's what I've decided to do because my handwriting is not the world's greatest. So legibility is important. Make sure you put in the correct information as reported to you by your applicant. Whatever they tell you, sometimes you might have to help clarify, but make sure you put down the correct information, the correct state, the correct address, listen carefully, driver's license number, whatever it may be, address of the doctor, phone number for the doctor, everything needs to be double checked. Now, I'm going to preach for just a minute on something that I think is extremely important. Even when you're taking a term application, I have never in my years in this business sent in an application without an illustration. I'll take that back. Maybe in the days before we had illustrations, if that gives you an idea of how long I've been doing this, I may not have sent in an illustration when there weren't any such things, but I always send in an illustration, even on a term policy, because if there's ever any discrepancy, you can usually check with the illustration to clear up any questions or any problems. I highly recommend that you always send in an illustration. I know sometimes we're forced to, and sometimes we're not, but I always put in an illustration with every application. Okay, if you do make any mistakes, just draw one line through the incorrect information, print in legibly the correct information, and make absolutely sure that you initial it and that your proposed insured initials it as well, regardless of how minor you think it might be. Mark it out. Do not use whiteout. Put one line through it, get the initials for both you and your applicant. Sometimes they're missing signatures. Make sure that everywhere there is a box for a signature or an X or a line, or when it says signature, that when applicable, get the correct signature, yours as well as the applicant, because we see a lot of applications that the agent sometimes forgets to sign. Very important. Make sure you get the right people to sign on the right line. If the owner and insured are two different people, make sure you get the right people to sign where they're supposed to sign. And it's very clear on every application I've ever seen, where it's the applicant or proposed insured versus the owner. There is a transmittal form we'll look at in a few minutes that I also highly recommend. it will help you communicate better with the underwriter about anything that is not pure vanilla, middle of the road. The transmittal form can help. It cannot hurt. It'll help the underwriter and the home office keep track of your application with any additional information that you think is important to include on that. There will be a tools and tips sheet that will print out when you print your forms using the application kit. Now, these tools and tips don't need to be sent in, don't need to be signed. They're for your use and your convenience. They will help you avoid mistakes. They will give you ideas and clarification if you have any questions about something on the application you're not exactly sure about. Something else we'll go through is the temporary agreement, the limited insurance agreement, that when someone submits money, you need to know how that works and exactly what it means for your client. We'll go over that. There is a rider and benefit sheet for your reference that will print out. And if you have someone that wants a waiver of premium or a waiver of mortality charges or an accidental death benefit or whatever it may be, additional insured, make sure you understand which riders go on which policies in which states for which specific application you're sending in. You'll have a sheet to refer to that you may make use of. And last thing I'm going to mention is make sure when it says name of the policy, look on your illustration, and whatever the illustration says, that's exactly what you should put down. Now, when we're working with AIG Partners, which is one of the core companies with Messer Financial, all of their products, term or universal life, are called QOL. That stands for quality of life. So if it's a term policy, it's going to be QOL, because there is some natural confusion sometimes, because the sister company, AIG Brokerage Group, which is out of Houston, AIG Partners Group is out of Nashville. There are a lot of, matter of fact, there's about 90% similarities in the applications and in the policies, but you need to distinguish between the two. So remember, the QOL will distinguish applications and policies for AIG Partners in Nashville. And yes, I'll give you the addresses, both email, physical address, and fax numbers where you would send the applications. Okay, now if you look at the screen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to back out of where I am, because I want to show you how I got there. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is go into, I use Chrome, Google Chrome, and I'm going to go into the website for AIG Partners Group. It's https:// You can see it there on the screen. The name of the website is estationssecure.americangeneral.com. Now, the website for American General Partners Group and American General Brokerage Group is the same one. So it can be confusing, and you'll need to pay attention when you work your way through here. But to get to what we're going to cover today, that is the email address you should use, and it's going to take you to the opening screen. I've already logged in. Of course, if you haven't registered for the website, you'll need to do so when you have, or if you do have an agent number, it will allow you to register for the website. You'll pick your ID and pick your password. And then when you go in, this is going to be the opening screen. And what you'll need to do, and I highly recommend, again, because of time restrictions, and we respect your time, I'm going to cover a lot of material, but I'm going to use as a kind of a outline some training sessions that are already on the website that are very detailed, very comprehensive, very easy for you to spend a little bit of time. If you want to go over that when I finish, I think that would be a great refresher for you now or at any time. So the first thing we're going to go to get there is we're going to put our cursor over Toolbox, and we're going to go down to where it says PG Career Campus, Partners Group Career Campus under Toolbox, and click on it. When you get into the Toolbox in the Career Campus, you're going to look for AIG Partners Group PG Agent Training, and you'll click on that. And again, I know that you can certainly take notes or come back into the recorded session to follow along carefully. When you click on the AIG PG Agent Training, you need to go to Career Campus. Click on Career Campus, and it will open up an area for training. Now, specifically what we're going to do today, there are several sections. It's both a training session on the WinFlex software, the illustration software, and application training. So we're going to click on that, and it'll take a second for it to come up. Okay, here's the screen where we were when we started. What I'm going to do is, again, click on WinFlex 6.5, that's the illustration software, and application training, and it opens up this window. So what we're going to do initially today, we're going to start with the paper application. Now, I'm going to launch it, and I'm going to walk through this fairly quickly. Again, I'm going to try to hit on all of the major points. And if you'll follow along with me here as I go from one screen to the next, first of all, we're going to see exactly what this is going to cover. First of all, we're going to talk about paper applications versus the e-apps, and we're going to cover the e-apps at the end of this presentation. It's going to talk about the application itself, the kit, the transmittal form, some of the things I've already mentioned to you. It'll go over that limited temporary life insurance agreement, the accelerated benefit rider disclosure forms, how to submit the application, where to find that life kit, and lots of other help and support. First thing is, when you choose to write an application, are you going to use a paper app or an e-app? Here's the fact. Half of paper applications that are submitted are not in good order. One of the things that an e-application is going to force you to do is it's going to make everything be in good order before it can go in. It's going to make you do it right. If you've overlooked something, forgotten something, didn't fill in something, whatever it may be, when it goes in, it's going to be in good order. And that's why these applications are going to be on a fast track compared to the paper applications. So what you want to do is to make sure that you choose what is the most suitable for your client, your situation, whether you're going to use an e-app or a paper app. Now, sometimes we can't use an e-app for lots of reasons, but it's there. If we want to use the e-app, it might cut down on some of the errors. Now, when we talk about a common application, other than the differences in a state-by-state situation, the application is going to be the same. Now, when you go, and I'll show you where to go later, it's also under the tools on the website to get to the forms and get to the life kit. It's going to force you to put in the state It's going to force you to pick the application, the policy application, the policy you're applying for. It's going to force you to do that. But you can see, except for the state of New York, the applications are all going to be what we call the common application. And pretty much the other reason that we mention a common application is because the application is the same for both AIG Brokerage out of Houston and AIG Partners out of Nashville. Now, I'm going to take just a second here to explain the difference between the two sister companies. As I said earlier, it's about 90 or 95%, everything's the same, except the policies are a little bit different when it comes to accelerated benefit riders. There are three companies, in my opinion, that offer the very best accelerated benefit riders, and AIG Partners is one of those. AIG Brokerage out of Houston doesn't offer, they only offer the terminal illness rider as far as an accelerated benefit. AIG Partners offers all three: terminal, chronic, critical. Now, that means even though the premium is built in, their premiums are a little bit higher than AIG Brokerage. AIG Brokerage is very competitively priced. AIG Partners is maybe, I don't know, 3 to 8% more in premium. But here's what you've got to decide. When you're working with your prospect and you sold it or are selling the policy, you need to bring out the fact that these accelerated benefit riders add value to the policy. Now, there may be people that are already covered for long-term care, for example. They might be more of a prospect for AIG Brokerage. But if they're not covered for long-term care, and it's a matter of budgeting for that, because long-term care, traditional long-term care, is not inexpensive, and it's getting more and more expensive, you can include at least a degree of coverage with your life insurance policy. Sometimes they're called hybrid policies. These accelerated benefit riders are endorsements. They come with the policy. They're built in. Now, that means that if I'm comparing AIG Brokerage and AIG Partners is going to be just a teeny bit higher. But is that extra $3, $5, $10, $12, depending on the size of the policy, $15 a month, is it worth picking up the critical illness and the chronic illness? In most cases, you're going to say yes, because it's adding another dimension to that life insurance policy, actually two dimensions that weren't there before, and it gives the client an opportunity for flexibility to make a decision later on in life when these events occur, to make a decision that otherwise would not be there, especially if they don't have long-term care coverage. This is an excellent way to give them some degree of coverage with just a few more dollars a month, probably less than what most people spend at Starbucks each month, maybe even each week. Anyway, the life kits are common. When you put in the state, you'll get the correct life kit. Now, then that's what we're going to go over right now is the life kit. And we're going to cover the different forms that may be there. And you can see there are a lot of forms here. These are just some of those that you'll be looking at. And we're going to start out with the transmittal form. The transmittal form is important because it allows you to add additional information that will help track the application when it reaches the home office. It will allow you, if you have someone, whoever the person is at the Messer Group that would be kind of the case manager, their name and contact information would go in here. You're going to identify basically what type of policy it is. If you are sending in something to follow up on a policy that already has been assigned a policy number, it gives you a place here. Otherwise, when you're sending in a new app, you're not going to know what the policy number is, so you don't have to worry about filling that in. One of the few things you can leave blank. And again, if you have another person who is your case manager, so to speak, their information would go here to keep you up to date on a real-time basis of what the status of that application might be. if you have any special instructions, and you see here where it says cover letter attached, time and time again, underwriters tell us that if there's something that falls out of the normal middle of the road vanilla application that they need to know that's not addressed in the application, tell us about it. Put a cover letter. Tell us what they need to know to add to or further describe what's in that application, because the underwriter is not looking at your client eye to eye. They haven't had a chance to discuss the ins and outs of their background, health background, their hobbies, their work, anything that's out of the normal, anything that's unusual that you can't address by answering the questions. Put a cover letter. Anything else, if it's a husband and wife or a second application for the family, let them know so they can keep that with the same underwriter. And you don't have to worry about one being issued at a different time than another. You'll have consistent underwriting when that's done. Okay. If it's a multiple applications, put that in. And down here at the bottom where it says other special instructions, you can put in something like, here's an example. The applicant has sleep apnea, which is well controlled with nightly use of a CPAP. That can be important. It may not have been addressed when you ask the application, answer the question on the application. So this is important. The transmittal form is important for lots of reasons. I mentioned earlier this tools and tips sheet. There's lots of information on here that will be your ally in submitting business in good order, so it can minimize any delays. If you'll look through here, it does address some things that are tricky sometimes. Anything out of the ordinary that will help you complete that application more accurately and correctly and completely. To accelerate your application, one of the things that's a big hang-up sometimes is the temporary life insurance agreement. This means that if you send in money with the application, that your client's actually going to be covered throughout the underwriting period. And what that means is, and honestly, I had this happen to me one time. I took an application on a Thursday. The gentleman had his paramedical exam on Friday, 44 years old, non-smoker, great health. On Sunday night, he died of a blood clot that went to his brain. He did submit money with the application. He completed his paramedical exam. Thank goodness the application was completed correctly, accurately, and it paid a death benefit. Obviously, it did have to go on through underwriting, but it paid a death benefit on someone, what was that, died 3 days after I took the application. In this business, what can happen will happen, and you need to make absolutely sure that you dot all the I's and cross all the T's, because some of you will have some situations that can be a life-changing event for some families. I'll just put it that way. So the temporary life insurance agreement, if you take money, if the person qualifies, and we'll look at that in just a minute, make sure that your client knows that they'll be covered during the underwriting, even though their policy won't be dated until later on unless they ask for a special backdating or a special date or whatever it may be. They're covered by sending that money in or indicating on the application that the original premium can be drafted when they receive the application. Okay, here is the reference sheet for all the different riders for both. You'll see the QOL policy here, the QOL policies here. Those are AIG partners. The AIG Selecta term and RP Select term are AIG brokerage out of Houston. So make sure that when you're using AIG partners, you look for the QOL as is outlined here. That indicates that your application is going to AIG Partners Group, and whether it's a term policy or a UL policy, they're going to have those endorsements of all of the accelerated benefit riders. Okay, here's a little questionnaire, or a little question that hopefully you'll know the answer to. What are some of the things that can cause a paper application to be submitted that's not in good order? I think we've talked about these. Sometimes there's missing application information. Sometimes some of us are still pretending we're doctors. Sometimes we don't choose the right rider or benefits as the applicant wished for. Sometimes there are forms that needed to be included that are not there. And sometimes we don't even put in the product name or correct product name. Those are all reasons that we see on a daily basis to create applications that are not in good order. And you know, it is embarrassing, it's time consuming for you to have to go back to a client and say, oh, John, I forgot to have you sign this form. Or John, I forgot to ask you the name and address and phone number of your doctor in case they need to ask for an attending physician statement. Make sure if you do it right the first time, you're saving time, you're saving some embarrassment, you're saving lots of time in the home office when otherwise it may be held up, because typically when they receive a paper application and there are problems, you're typically looking at as much as a 10-day to 2-week minimum delay on having that policy go through underwriting. All the applications that come through our office, the applications that go through Messer Financial, those are scrubbed. It's always better to have 2 sets of eyes instead of 1, but it makes it so much easier if you double check, triple check the application to make sure it's in as good order as it possibly can be. No, I got ahead of myself. It's just telling you there that to make sure that everything's in good order before you end that meeting with your applicant. Okay, now I'm not going to pretend that you all don't know how to fill in certain information. The name, you need the first legal name, you need a middle initial, a last name. You need to make sure that you have a legible Social Security number that's required. Make sure you have the correct date of birth. In what state was the person born, or country if they were born outside of the United States. I see a lot of errors sometimes where it says current age. Current age may not be the same age as you have on your illustration, because some companies use nearest age, but they want the current age. If that person's birthday is next week, put down the current age. It's still going to be, nearest age is going to be a year later, but they want the current age there. I see that mistake a lot of times. If they are a tobacco user, make sure that you answer this question properly, because as you know, if someone is classified as a tobacco user, that's usually almost a 50% increase in the premium, sometimes as much as 80% increase in premium. So make sure you fill that out correctly. Have they ever used? If so, what kind? When was the last time they used? Are you still using? That's important. We also need to make sure of the type of identification this person has to make sure that John Smith is really John Smith. We need a correct, complete driver's license number and the state in which they're licensed. Again, if we're talking someone 16 and older, if they don't have a driver's license, explain. Make sure you're accurate and legible with the address, the phone numbers, both at work and at home. Income is total income for the individual, household on an annualized basis, and net worth. This is, people sometimes don't understand what net worth is, and that's something obviously we work with every day. And net worth is simply this. It's the value of all that you own minus all indebtedness. If my home's worth $250,000 and I owe $150,000 on it, well, that means that portion of my net worth is $100,000. It doesn't have to be down to the penny. It can be an estimate. The company's that's just part of the financial underwriting to make sure that we don't have someone who is indigent that's applying for $1 million policy. And I'm overstating that, but it is part of the financial underwriting to make sure that someone has some net worth. And obviously, if you've got a juvenile, even a child in college, may not be a child anymore. There's a reason why the net worth is zero if someone is a student and not earning an income, for example. Make sure you answer the questions about citizenship correctly, whether they are a born in the U.S. citizen or someone who's picked up their citizenship or has some type of visa. Make sure you do that correctly. If there is going to be a secondary insured, pretty much the same thing. Just make sure that you answer those questions completely correctly and legibly. This is an important part, the ownership. Hold on just a second. Okay. The ownership is important because, with a life insurance policy, you've got several people, persons or entities. You can have an insured, you can have a different owner, you can have a different payor, and you're going to have some beneficiaries in there. So there are different players and different parts. Make sure you get everyone where they should be. The owner's going to sign some places. If the owner is different from the applicant, from the proposed insured, that's very highly incorrectly completed area sometimes. If the owner is a business or a trust, you need to make sure that the owner signs where the owner's supposed to sign and put his or her title. If it's a trust, you're going to have to put the date of the trust, the name of the trust, and the tax ID of the trust. So those are important parts to avoid any delays in the home office. Beneficiaries complete everything they're asking for. And make sure that if the share is, if you've got multiple beneficiaries, make sure the total is 100%. If there are more than 3 beneficiaries, just use a different piece of paper, write down all the information that's requested in those blanks, and make sure your applicant signs it. And if the applicant is the owner, if the owner is different than the proposed insured, the owner needs to sign it and date it as well. If the owner is an entity, a business owner or a business or a trust, make sure you fill out all that information correctly. And if it is a business, you'll need to submit a financial statement for that business. Okay, if a child is listed as a beneficiary, do you have to include that Social Security number for that child? Yes, you do. If a child is listed, it is required to submit the Social Security number and all the other information that is requested. Make sure, again, that you put down the correct name of the application. If it's a term policy, how many years? What class with your field underwriting, after you've talked with your client about their height, their weight, their health history, the health history of their parents, and you've come up with, okay, we think it's going to be preferred. Whatever you quote, whatever's on that illustration, put it in here. If you're dealing with the UL, make sure you indicate which, especially if it's an overfunded policy, tell how you've completed the compliance for that policy to make sure it doesn't become a modified endowment. That's what these guideline premiums and cash value accumulation tests are. If the person wants, ask about riders, go back to that reference sheet that we looked at earlier and see what they can apply for, or give you, there's some tips about that that'll help you complete this section. If they don't want any additional benefits other than the built-in accelerated benefit riders, which are there automatically, you don't need to apply for those. Those are there. But refer to that reference sheet to help you complete that section. If there is information, if you're going to have an additional insured on the policy, maybe you've got a child or children on that policy, you're going to have to fill out some information about those proposed insureds, just as you did for the primary insured. Fill out the same information in the same way that you did before, and when you list their beneficiaries, fill out everything just as we talked about for the primary insured. Okay. If your proposed insured is going to have a paramedical exam, and this is another reason to run the illustration, it'll tell you what the underwriting guidelines are. In most cases, you're going to have, certainly for adults, you're going to have a paramedical exam. If the nurse is going to ask those questions, you don't have to. So when we get into whether it's for an additional insured or whether it's for the primary insured, you don't have to fill out, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, you don't have to fill out the medical information twice. Sorry, I jumped a little ahead of myself. On this page, premium payment, you're going to show exactly what mode is going to be used, whether you're submitting an application, cash with the application, if you want a special date to backdate, for example, the premium payor, if it's different from the applicant, make sure this is filled in correctly. And later on the bank draft authorization form, you'll need to get the signature of the person that owns that account that's paying the premium. So there's some information required about the premium payor. If you have some supplemental coverage on the policy, which of these should you include? The amount of the benefit, the amount of the term riders, the amount of the annual premium, the number of people covered. Actually, the best answer, you're going to need all of those, but the main thing when you fill out the supplemental coverage page is the amount of any term riders to indicate what you're adding to this policy for supplemental coverage. Okay, we're getting down toward the end. Replacement form, the thing to remember, most important thing is this. If your applicant owns a life insurance policy or an annuity or disability insurance, they'll have to complete this placement form, come up later, but they're going to have to indicate that in this section, what they own, company name, if you have the policy number, what type of coverage it is. If they own any one of those, whether they're going to replace or not, the replacement form has to be completed. There's some background information about the habits, work-related, hobby-related, that you need to complete. That's something that the paramedical examiner is not necessarily going to ask. So that section 13 needs to be completed about whether you skydive or hang glide, or if you've ever had bankruptcy, whatever it may be. That part is very important, has to be completed by you. If you have any additional, anything that you want to describe, add to, elaborate on, make use of this number 14. Again, anything that you can do to help the underwriter to give a better explanation is going to be appreciated. Make sure that the owner, if different from the proposed insured, make sure you get the right owner, the right signatures for the right people in the right places. There's for the owner if it's different from the primary insured. And it says, if other than the owner, then the applicant needs, the insured needs to sign here. If they're the same, you only need to sign one place or the other, actually. You'll need to sign and indicate some things you've done here, including your agent number, which is very important if you want to get paid a commission. If there is another adult proposed insured, that person would sign here. Part B is the part I mentioned earlier. I thought we were getting to earlier about the health information. If a paramedical exam is going to be done, you don't need to make your applicant sit through that twice. This is one of the few things you can ignore if there's going to be a paramedical exam. If not, you need to complete all the Part B health information. Okay, if a person has an existing policy but doesn't replace it, then we can leave number 12 blank. In other words, we don't have to send in a replacement form. True or false? Well, that's going to be false, because if somebody has a life, annuity, or disability income policy, ridiculous as it sounds, they still have to complete the surrender form. This section, and we've talked about it a little bit before, goes into the temporary life insurance agreement. Again, it's very important that if somebody's submitting cash with the app, you need to complete this, let them know that they're covered during the underwriting process. But the clock doesn't start ticking as far as premiums go until that policy is issued. The ABR disclosure form must be signed. There's a couple pages. Make sure they understand what they're covered for on the accelerated benefit riders. They need to sign that. And now that you're finished, here are the 3 different ways that you're going to submit a paper application: regular mail, overnight mail, FedEx, UPS. You can actually email the applications in. That's the quickest way to do it. It's clean. It's not something that is going to be, if you fax it, sometimes you lose some legibility. The email is going to be a cleaner way to do that. You don't have to worry about multiple pages and fax machines, and takes a little longer. So those are the ways that you can get your paper application into the home office. And I don't know if you had time to take all that down, but in the interest of time, you can look at the recording if you didn't get all that and pick that up. Where do you get the life kits? You go to Toolbox, you go to Forms Depot, and what will come up will look like this. You put in, just answer the questions: new business, North Carolina, GUL, quality of life GUL, in both places, and you'll look it up. It'll give you an opportunity to email it or print it, whichever you wish to do. This would be an example of someone who took wanted a life kit for the state of California. You can email it or print it right there. If you want to look at all the different forms, you would just click on this highlighted area. It'll lay out the whole thing for you. If there are some forms that you need, you can go to the Forms Depot and look for any other forms, such as maybe a collateral assignment form if a loan is involved and the reason for the insurance is the loan, for example. It may not be part of the kit. If it's not there, go to Forms Depot again under the toolkit and look up that form. You can just put in the collateral assignment form, click, it'll find it. At any time that you need help and support, in addition to calling the fine folks at the Messer Group, you also can make use of the home office by calling this number. And this is true whether we're talking paper applications or whether we're talking e-applications. The purpose for the LTLIA, the limited temporary coverage, is that you're giving person coverage during the underwriting process. And there are some questions that they have to answer. All of those questions have to be no. They can't have had certain illnesses, situations, and they have to qualify for it. Okay, now we're going to quickly, we've only got a little bit of time left. And what I'm going to do, again, because of the interest of time and lots of things that we needed to cover, if you know how to do a paper app, then you're 95% of the way there for an e-app. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump quickly to an area that I'm going to ask you. Let me get out of here. And the same page that we went to a while ago, we just did the paper application. If you want to go to the e-app, there are actually 6 different areas. They're all very important. I'm just going to look at just a few minutes of the first one, because if you understand how the first page works, and I'll move along a little bit here, it makes you put the information in. It's got to be in good order before you can continue. It's faster, quicker, easier to process. If you go through each of these sections, and it'll probably take you maybe 25, 30 minutes to go through all 6 sections of this. Sometimes the pop-up blocker will cause that, and it'll be a little place up here on the right. It'll be highlighted. Just click on it. It will allow you to go on into it. The areas that are in yellow are absolutely required. Remember that. As you go through the application and complete each part, then this section over here on the left, there will be a green check mark each time you complete and go on. Information about the primary insured, about the policy, the premium, the additional benefits, the beneficiary. Each time you complete a section and do it correctly and in good order, they'll give you a green check mark. When you finish, it'll ask you to double check everything, as it already has pretty much. If you've got in everything you want to put in, it will allow you then to go into the signatures. And there's 2 sections about the signatures. The signatures may be electronic, they may be paper, depends on, wet signature, and how you will, if it's a client that's 3 states away, how you can do that by a wet signature or an e-signature. If you just follow along and complete all the areas, sometimes if you complete something, it'll open up some other areas if something is applicable. It's very easy to guide and go through. And if you'll take the time to go through this e-app presentation one time, you will be more than ready to go. It's very easy. There is a narrative with it. And again, because of lack of time, we didn't go through it today. But again, go to that same, follow that same track, go to, and you see how easy it is. It's very, very easy, but it's something that's important to do before you take that first e-app. And I apologize that we didn't have time enough to go through all of the different aspects, but it's, again, if you'll go to this training session, you'll see as we've completed some areas up here, that the green marks are checked here as you go on down and complete each one. They'll each be have a green check beside of each one. So it takes you through all of the different parts of the application. It shows you all of the ramifications depending on how you answer certain questions. It'll take you all the way through it. So I've just kind of walked through the first section on the primarily an overview, and then you can go into each section. Now, what I'm going to do, because we're near our time limit, I'm going to ask Mark. I'm going to turn this over to Mark, who's been monitoring any questions that came up so we wouldn't slow down. So Mark, if you would be so kind as to give me any pertinent questions that I might help answer, I'll do that right now so we can keep this within close to 1 hour as we promised.
Rob, thanks very much again for this presentation of information that is so desperately needed by our agents to properly complete their business and, as you brought out, make sure they get paid. That's the most important thing of it all.
No doubt.
Now,
you're welcome, and I only apologize because I didn't get to quite as much as I wanted to, but I can only talk so fast. I'm from down south, Mark.
Well, I understand, and that was very thorough. In fact, the completion of the paper application, if one is able to do it as thorough as you just did, will make walking through an electronic app quite simple. And
correct.
I think for the element for next week, what I was planning to do, I know I'm going to throw Rebecca off here completely, is perhaps I'll come back next week and work on an electronic application process for the agents. Questions though, again, your job was so thorough, Bob, that we don't have any questions out there. And I'm just, no.
It's either that, Mark, or I put everybody to sleep. One of the two.
No, they were attentive. I was able to watch the screen for attentive activity, and there was only occasionally something drifted away. So that was very good.
Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to thank Bob. And Bob and I have worked together. I can't tell you again how many years, but the trust factor and the knowledge as sincerely is available to all of us. And again, here at Messer, when you've got questions on this work, please don't hesitate to give us a call. The Producer Services Department at extension 813 is always available. If you're working directly with a marketer, of course, they'll take the hands-on approach to you personally. Questions, of course, with the life business, I'm open to at any time. I'm at extension 713. And I think for today, we're right on the time limit, Bob. I think it's time we close it up and wish everybody a good week. I know it's going to be hot, so try to keep comfortable and keep doing what you need to do to build up your life business, ladies and gentlemen. So, Bob, thank you very much.
Mark, you're most welcome. I hope this is worthwhile to some of the folks that are getting more into the life business. But if there are any questions that anyone has, certainly that come back to you, you're welcome to contact me, and I'll try to answer any of those. And I hope everyone has a great day today.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Until next Wednesday, same time, same station. Mark Hunter signing off.